Well, hey, great thinkers. I am super excited for today's episode on the Think Great experience. We have Kari Switala. She is the Chief Creative Officer and Visionary for Wild Fig Marketing. Kari, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, I've had the opportunity. I've known Kari for many years. We've actually shared the stage in different events, and I've always been fascinated to hear from her. So professional, so passionate, so articulate on the message that she has for that audience. Kari, can you just tell us a little bit about Wild Fig Marketing and your role with them as the owner?
Yeah, sure. So my role is really as kind of the visionary for our organization, but also I'm mainly in charge of strategy. So helping our clients, we work with both B2B and B2C clients. So understanding kind of what, who they're trying to market to and what products or services they're trying to market to. And more importantly, like what sets them apart, what makes them different, because we know it's a pretty competitive marketplace. And then finding the right plan, the right tools to help them achieve those goals. So that's my role, is to kind of uncover that strategy and absolutely love playing in that space.
Talk about the strategy has certainly shifted in the last 12 months. It's not business as usual right now.
No, not at all.
Let me ask you a question. As we're talking about challenges and how to overcome them, these are all steps to greatness. But the last 12 months have been filled with, well, we'll just sum it up with COVID-19. We'll talk about all the nuances later, but how has COVID-19 impacted your business? I know teamwork is important for you. I know that, just understanding your business, you feel that your team is an extension of your client's team.
Mm-hmm.
And so like us, I remember, what was it, March 11th, when the World Health Organization declared a pandemic, and all these things you have lined up for the year were postponed. How did you guide your team through that? What were some of the things that you did to help them during a period of uncertainty? Because we didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. So the one thing that was kind of cool about before this all happened, our team, we've been really big on just kind of having a flexible work environment. So, yes, there's work to be done, and as long as the work is done, we don't necessarily care, what the hours are. So we've got, kids, our staff that have young kids, and so obviously that was kind of a big deal where everyone started to have to work from home. But prior to the pandemic, we did allow our team to work remote on Mondays and Fridays, and then we were in the office for a couple of days. So I think that was the biggest shift, is just, first of all, just giving them grace, knowing that they're now having to, work from home, and maybe with, a spouse or, animals. I have 3 dogs. So like trying to keep them quiet during the course of the day is always a challenge. And then also with, having kids, kids at home, we just tried to give them as much grace as possible and just encourage them that, hey, we're gonna work with you. We're gonna see what we can do. And then just trying to stay positive. So that was probably the biggest thing, just to kind of keep that encouraging message out in front of them as much as possible.
Well, how helpful was it that your team already had some experience working remote?
It was huge. Now I will say
not a lot of teams had that.
Yeah, we were definitely set up for that. And the one thing I will say that was probably the hardest for many of them is most of us are extroverts. So going from being able to see each other and to then, just being able to do Zoom and different things. So we brought, some of the team have brought different ideas to the table. So we started a water cooler chat, basically like twice a month. And our team is actually running it. So it's optional if it works for you to, to be on there. And it's just meant to socialize, just to be like talking about what we would normally talk about in between meetings if we were in the office together. And that's been, I think, a huge
just to capture some form of normalcy.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's huge. There was no way we thought it was going to last this long.
No.
and I've often said that, as we approach, we're just a couple of days away from the anniversary of, the worldwide pandemic. And yes, we're not going out and celebrating that anniversary.
Right.
But when you look at it as we're a year into this, and we've still got some time to go, It's not that on the year anniversary, it just ends. I think we're going into the transition phase. So I always say there's the great obstacle, and that was COVID-19, kind of wrapped with some civil unrest and an election year unlike anything we've ever seen, and transitioning a little bit in and out, and then the restrictions came back. So I think people are tired.
Hmm.
And now I believe, based on my experiences, that we're going into this transition phase where everybody's transitioning different. I mean, you probably see it with all the clients you have, that every business has got a different set of procedures for this. But I think sometimes the transition phase can be much harder than the actual incident itself. Not that this pandemic wasn't challenging, but with transitions, it can be less formalized. It's just, all right, well, let's get back to some normalcy here. But there's really no guidebook on it.
Right. Right.
And I think that this is the time when leaders really need to be able to communicate a message of forward thinking to their people. I know that goal setting is really critical to you.
Hmm.
How have you used goal setting during the pandemic? Because most people I've encountered, and I'm a big advocate for set goals, set goals, set goals. I mean, even my first book was the goal formula. So I love goals. But what I find is it's almost human nature to push your goals to the side when there's a challenge.
For sure.
But we should bring them to the forefront.
Right. Well, and I think it does, so I would say the first couple of weeks of the pandemic, so we were on target to, my husband works with our company part-time.
Yeah.
And our goal was to bring him on board full-time last late spring.
Okay.
And of course, a variety of other things that we were looking to do at that time too. And we ended up, obviously with the pandemic, that kind of got, pushed to the side.
Yeah.
And we did it for the first couple of weeks just to kind of adjust and get used to like what was happening and just really just trying to survive at that time. But then what we found is, like, as we got into summer, if we continue to just kind of let this slide and just operate with what was in front of us, we weren't really moving
right
forward towards those goals. And so we kind of came together and said, hey, we're going to set some pretty stealthy goals just to kind of reunite the team. And I think it's been really helpful. We report as, like on new clients and sales, kind of where we're at, but we made it like, hey, here's our mission. Here's our goal that we're going to shoot for. We need your help. How can we get there? And I think that just kind of helped to focus on the positive versus all the other, negative that was happening. And so I think that that's been a big game changer for our team, and we're really close to those goals. So
it'll be so great. It's so great when you get your spouse full time with you.
Yes.
I mean, talk about having the benefits of a business working together.
Right.
Now, when you set these goals with the team, did they have input into the goals too? Did they offer, hey, here's a goal that we should have? Or were they following your goals, or were they able to contribute goals, on their own too?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of both. So one of the things, so we had some revenue goals that we needed to reach, knowing like, hey, in order to get, him on board full time, we have to hit this revenue, but we also need to retain. So like, we need to continue to retain the clients that we have while, adding on new business. And so that revenue goal was pretty well established.
Yeah.
But we kind of went back and talked to them more about, all right, what can we do to retain the current clients that we have? Like, what ideas do you have? How does this play into our goal? And really got their feedback. And I will say it was some of the best discussions we've had, just because we tried to, I think, we've talked about this. I'm a big proponent for learning. And so I do a lot of reading, a lot of Audible, and, trying to put yourself in the position of like a client and kind of looking at the experience or the situation through their eyes. And it was really fun to see like what came of those conversations. And so they definitely did have a say in what, like, kind of how we got to that goal, and even like what we could do to work as a team to help reach that.
I think what you're doing is just creating that buy-in for the team.
Right.
And I think goals are important all the time. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I've set goals during the worst of times, during the best of times, but there's something about setting them during chaos or crisis or uncertainty. I feel like when we set the goal, it's off there in the future, and it at least allows us some opportunities to look up from this world we live in and just look to a better future. I
For
think
sure.
there's so much mental power with goal setting.
Definitely. And the other thing that was kind of cool is, did you ever read The Dream Manager?
I have not read that one.
Kelly? Um,
No.
great book. I actually listened to it on Audible, and it's kind of like the whole process of understanding, like if you want to, they came at it from kind of like improving retention within their team,
Yeah.
and how if you help the team understand, like grow personally and professionally,
Yep.
how that can impact. So understanding what their dreams are, how that can impact, and helping them reach them can impact the company. And so we started that back in the fall, where we have kind of a dream manager spreadsheet where we help the team. They determined like what they wanted to focus on for the next kind of like 30,
Sure.
not 30, but 30 to 60 days, and what their dream or their goal was. And it was so fun to report back at the end of the year. Like one wanted to do an ebook, cookbook, and she got it done, and she was able to report back on that. And we all, helped her to promote it, and we were all super excited about it. So I think that kind of going back to not just like goals for the company,
Yeah.
also like what are your personal goals, and how can we help you to achieve them and hold you accountable as well.
I mean, I think you've touched down on some. I've been preaching to leaders all around the world that if you really want buy-in on the company goals, get to know your people's goals.
Right.
It's interesting if you don't take an interest in their goals, even if it's a cookbook, which I'm actually interested. I'd like to have a link for that. I'm always up for
Oh,
a
for
good
sure.
cookbook. Um, but it's interesting. We always think that people should be so excited about our corporate goals, but then we never ask them about their goals. So I love hearing that, because goal setting, goal accomplishing, those are two different things. It's easy to set a goal. It's the accomplishing part that you need to do, but they can be challenging, especially during a pandemic.
Right.
But I love the fact that you're getting to know your people on the level of finding out what motivates them the most. And maybe it isn't a part of Wild Fig marketing, but it's a part of their life. And so I think, what I'm hearing is, if I were to ask you your greatest asset at Wild Fig, what would you say?
Our team.
And that comes out in your actions. And I think that's so important. What I found as a business coach is everybody says the same thing. I said, what's your greatest asset? They'll say our people, our team, but then they don't back it up.
Right.
It's kind of lip service, but you're not doing that. You're actually encouraging them to set and accomplish goals, especially during this pandemic.
Right.
I mean, that had to have created higher levels of buy-in and teamwork and enthusiasm and excitement. I mean, I'm getting fired up just hearing that your team set goals. They're not even my team. I mean, it's such a simple technique to unify people.
Right. Well, the other thing I will say that was pretty fun was we had them set, like if you could, and share, like we sent out dream books. So I gave them all kind of a journal book, and then
Yeah.
markers. It was like going back to school.
Yeah.
And had them like fill out, like write down 100 dreams that you have. And it was interesting because some of them, said, hey, this was like one of the hardest activities I've ever done. Like I've never really thought about like much beyond like this year or then, the next year. And so then they shared with us like one of their like biggest dreams. And it was so fun to see, like one of them had talked about like, I would love to own a bed and breakfast. And then that started a conversation, and someone else was like, I really want to do that too. And so that part has been really fun too. Like, let's go big and extend like what this looks like. And then from there, they identified kind of what they wanted to work on for the next, for each quarter, basically.
I mean, I think that everybody listening to this right now should be setting up a time to talk to their people about their dreams, their goals, things that would make their life better. I mean, we've been in this pandemic for a year now. It's about a year too long for me,
right?
Because like you, I'm an extrovert. So when you're operating in this, little rectangular stage, it's challenging, even though we've gotten good at it.
Right.
I think that the simple fact of talking about dreams, talking about goals is so critical. We just don't do it enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too many people are just putting it to the back burner.
Yeah.
And I know, Kari, for you, you have probably a lot of mottos, a lot of affirmations you say, but how important has it been to empower your people during this time period?
I think really, I mean, it's been really important to really focus kind of on their mental health and like I said, giving them the grace and to
Yeah.
understand that like, hey, things are happening. Just, we had a couple that went through we're in a rough patch in their relationship, and it was like,
Yep.
take the time that you need,
Sure.
we'll get these things done. So I think that we did a couple other things too that were kind of fun. We have a team meeting every week where we do check-ins on, just like probably many people do. And
Yeah.
we added an education moment at the end. And so
Nice.
we take 10 minutes, and it's round robin. So it starts with, one person one week, then the next person the next week, and they can bring anything that they want into to the education. So it could be something
Sure.
on grammar,
You
which we're
never know
all
what you're going to
learning.
learn that day.
Or it could be talking about like, we had one that talked about gratitude and how to start, how to start your day with gratitude and the impact that can have, especially when you're in the pandemic and all the
Sure.
negative noise around us. And so they sent out gift card or note cards to each member of the team, like a little packet, and along with some inspirational cards to go inside there and stamps, and said, take and send these out to whomever you think might need to hear from you. And they loved it. It's just little things like that. It didn't take much, but it had a huge impact.
But it's more than just a job. And that's what I'm hearing. I think for your team, it's not just showing up every day and getting these things done off a checkbox. You're actually causing them to think outside of the box, which probably for a digital marketing company is huge to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think you got to start with your own people, right?
Right.
And I know for you, you're kind of you're like me, the glass is always half full.
Right.
And so have you noticed during the pandemic, you're going back to that kind of phraseology, that mindset more than you ever got before?
Oh, for sure. And also having to kind of rally the troops too. I mean, just
Yeah.
not just, our team, but, my husband, or, my kids, it's like, and just the people around me. Like, I turned off the news. I stopped watching the news because it was
Good
like,
move.
it just kills you. It's like you just
Yeah.
get into it. And speaking, to your point about being optimistic and probably overly optimistic at times, like I can't have that much negativity, or it just
It
drains me.
just sucks
So
the life out of you.
it sure does.
And I think, it does on a normal basis, but
Right.
during the pandemic, we're surrounded by negativity anyways. I agree with you. I've had to stop watching the news. It doesn't matter what channel you watch. It doesn't do anything good for your soul. You
No,
know what I mean? It's like, not to mention, if you're watching the news to find truth, you may have turned on the wrong station. It's
exactly.
there's so much confusion out there.
Right.
So, I love a good cliche. I love a good way of saying things that motivate. And yours was interesting. When I asked you, what cliche do you like the most? You said, own your magic, walk in your purpose, and rock your truth. Never heard that one before. Can you tell me a little bit about why that one means so much to you?
I think we all have something, unique to contribute to the world. And I think if you understand, or if you can figure out what that is, what that magic is, and then
Yeah.
work at it every single day to kind of continue to put it out there, that good things can happen. And I think
Yeah.
that when you're operating in that space as well, everything else is just that much better. So like, people get that sense from you. You bring that, that light and joy into the relationships you have.
Sure.
And so for me, that's really it. Like being authentic, understanding kind of what unique gift I have, and then making sure to use it for good.
I just like that you have magic, purpose, truth, and rocking it.
Right.
But I mean, what a powerful collection of words that maybe we need to use more these days. I think that it's easy to get stuck in this rut of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And I think leaders need to have a way of saying things to their people. And maybe you've even used this cliche, for your own clients, right? Where you've got to express to them, here's a way of rethinking things.
Mhm.
Um, let me ask you this. How has your focus shifted during COVID-19 when you approach looking for a client now? These are different conversations that we have.
Mhm.
Like for me, I've always taught on leading and planning and selling, but now I'm teaching people how to do it through chaos.
Right.
So you have a lot of competition in your field.
Mhm.
How are you guys standing out now during the pandemic? As a digital marketing company, What really separates you and your team, and why are clients choosing to work with you?
Yeah, I think part of it is kind of the trust factor. So we strongly believe in cultivating those relationships, and so we don't want to work with someone that just needs help for 10 days, or just needs a Hail Mary. Like, we're going to be honest and say, hey, this that's not something we can help with. It's going to take some time, and if you spend money with us, it's not going to necessarily be a good investment. So we're really committed to the relationship aspect of it, and I think that that comes out in our marketing that we do, in our conversations, those sales conversations. We talk about being a trusted partner, an extension of your team. And I think
Yep.
that really, we're not here just to get a job done. We're here to help you. So like
Yeah.
we throughout this pandemic, we had a client who lost 50% of their business overnight. And through that process, where they were one of our biggest clients, we thought, oh, maybe they're going to drop. They decided to innovate. They created a new product that was used, to help prevent the spread of COVID. We were
Wow.
able to help, help them name that product, help promote that product. And so it was actually a really cool experience being able to be part of their team. We definitely went above and beyond, like what our contract was with them.
Yeah.
We wanted to help them succeed, and we knew that it would come back around, at some point. And so I think that relationship aspect is really, really key for us.
I think during COVID, you kind of find out who's who. During
Right.
any chaos, whether it's us as service providers or business leaders or just leaders in general, team members, vendors, you just find out, who was speaking a good game and who wasn't during all of this.
Right.
Um, it's not the I like to say the playing field has shifted during COVID, and now we're going to go into a more blended environment of, yes, we'll do face to face, but we're going to do a lot of face to face and online meetings, and we have to be able to adapt to this new, well, I call it the new great era, because I got tired of hearing the new norm early on. So I was
Me
like, all right,
too.
well, I got to rename this.
Yeah.
And I like to think that we are going into a great new era. We just have to make it
Mhm.
through this transition. But you brought up a very, very important word, which is trust, and that's hard to find these days.
Right.
I think that leaders need to be trusted, in the workplace with their teams. There needs to be that synergy between a team and a leader, but also with our clients. Um, I think that the trust factor is just, it's been lost in the shuffle, and it can be even harder to build on an online platform too,
Right. Right.
right? Like, we're not together right now. So that separation can be hard to build trust. So it's interesting that you brought up trust. How important is that to establish so early on when we can't be around each other?
Right. It's very important, and I think that's where companies really have had to, you talked a little bit ago about like how vastly different, our world looks like today, from personally and professionally. And I think
Yeah,
from the business side, I don't remember what the numbers were off the top of my head, but the amount of money that companies are investing in their online presence, because that's where people are going to shop,
right.
change behaviors overnight, is so important. And then you think about like, okay, all these companies are saying, hey, we're going to go invest. This is the way to go. Now you've got all this competition. Like, how do you stand out? And so
That's
I
right.
think that the cool part about that is that this is really gives companies an opportunity to kind of tell their story and to think about like what truly does set you apart, or set your team apart,
Yeah,
and making sure that that's front and center, so that you capture the right people as well,
that's
that
right.
people say, hey, that's something that I want as well, and
Yep.
I value that relationship, and what their company values are. So I think we're going to see kind of a turn in that sense, where people, it's not just buying from a company, it's buying from a company whose values are aligned with yours.
Yep.
And that I think is really cool, because I love that piece of it.
Yeah, I think that this new great era we're going into, you'll find out who's who. And here's what's interesting. Yes, everybody's invested in all the online technology. And I remember some of our clients, everybody went remote so fast. There was no ramp up time. I think Gallup mentioned that 62% of the workforce was remote by April 20th. So just about a month after the pandemic, everybody that still had a job was remote. And that's crazy. And
Mhm.
I remember some clients saying, we did it so well, we're probably going to stay remote. And then a few months ago, they started saying, we're having virtual fatigue, and I'm like, all right, well, this isn't even over yet. So you really got to set some goals with your team, get them pumped up, because we're going to be remote for a little bit longer here. But it's interesting that I think even just after a year, there's this fatigue of being in the remote world. I mean, for me, I don't know about for you, but I'll tell you my experience. I would go do an all-day coaching event. I could do 6 hours on stage. Now, I had to ramp up for that when I first started, but I eventually got to the point where it was just fun. I didn't get tired from it. There was no exhaustion. I remember first starting out with these virtual meetings, I was exhausted and I'm sitting down. It was a complete paradigm shift, So, for me, I had to route my energy into certain areas because I wasn't traveling. I didn't have drive time. I wasn't waiting in airports. And so during COVID, I wrote a book, and it was all on communication because everybody was saying, oh, we're having trouble communicating. So I'm like, all right, well, let me write this one because I've had this idea, but maybe now's the time. But I know for you, and I think a lot of the great books come out of our personal experiences, and you wrote a book. And I know you have a goal to write a second one, but can you share a little bit about this moment of greatness for you, writing a book, and you did it during a time period where you were facing some very unique challenges on the home front too.
Right.
First of all, I love the title of your book.
Thank you.
I'm a big one on titles, whether it's a title of a movie or a title of a book, and I feel like you nailed it. Can you explain Living with the Lid Up?
Yes. So I have 2 teenage boys, and a lot of the stories that I share within the book are about them, and kind of joking about like life, as the sole female in a house of all males, and what that's like. And so the analogy of living with the lid up just really kind of spoke to that.
Sure.
And of course, as a side note, my boys were featured on the cover, and they were just telling me when we first launched the book and they saw the cover, they're like, so do we get a percentage of the proceeds? Because
I like the way they're thinking.
Yeah. And I said, no, this is your payment to me for all of the pain and hardship that you've caused me over the years. So this is this is your payment.
The perfect mom comeback. They're like, dang it, we didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. So the book is really truly about I've been a storyteller all my life. And so I love to be able to communicate and connect with people over stories, because you find that once you find that commonality, all of a sudden that relationship, kind of gets started, and people remember that. And so I just couldn't figure out how that all tied. I wanted to tie it back into business. And I started thinking about how we communicate. And so, people communicate by often telling stories, kind of going back to the caveman era. And so this book is all about personal stories, things that have happened to me. And then I tie it back into business lessons, like how I've applied this to my business professional career, and how to building relationships. And so the whole point of it is that to show you how our personal and professional lives are blended. They're not kept separate. And so the importance of being able to kind of share more about who you are as a person in your relationships, whether it's personally or professionally, how that can impact your success, and how to do that.
I mean, that's a huge goal to write a book. I mean, again, I think that when you set the goal of writing a book, accomplishing it can seem a little daunting.
For sure.
And here's what I found out. I've written a number of books, and people often come up, and I don't know, once you've written a book, maybe you've experienced this, people share with you that I'd like to write a book too.
Mm-hmm.
And you find out there's a lot of soon to be authors out there.
Yes.
How did you get into the mindset to take everything that was up here and actually get it into a format where you could tell your stories, people could understand it? How was that process for you?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I think the motivation was probably the biggest thing, and you kind of alluded to that. So, before I had been planning on writing a book, and I kept saying, when I get enough time, when I have spare time, which, as an entrepreneur doesn't happen very often, unless you make it happen. and unfortunately, our boys were in an ATV crash, and my oldest was severely injured, and close, life and death kind of situation. And it was one of those things that I just remember sitting, we were in the hospital room, and I'm looking at him and thinking, like, today could have ended so much different. And I'm so thankful that it went this, that it went this way. And, as much as it is cliche, it's like, you never know when, the next day is your last day.
That's
And,
right.
and I just decided at that point, like, no more waiting. I had this goal, and I actually wrote the first chapter while sitting in the hospital room with him. And I just made that commitment. And I said, I'm going to get this done by, within 6 months.
Wow.
And it was interesting because so often throughout that process, you have your self-talk that happens, like, oh, but I'm so busy, or, oh, I have to do all this extra time. And even had a friend that said, Kari, don't push yourself. Like, just if you need to push it out, no one else is going to know. And I'm like, but I'll know. And
That's right.
This is my goal. And so having that motivation really kind of directed like the rest of it. So it was like, it's gonna happen.
Isn't it interesting that sometimes our own friends might be what I consider kind of an average relationship? And I don't mean that they're not great friends, but they accept our excuses. In fact, they'll find them for you and then justify it, where you're like, well, you had a lot going on. Your son has been injured. You're running a business. It's okay.
Yeah.
So how did you push through that? Because I know right now there are a lot of people listening that want to write a book, probably more than we'll ever know. But I would like to say that COVID-19 is one of those challenges that we have to push through.
Right.
And you push through a health issue. I know for me, anytime my wife has encountered cancer or cardiac arrest, or there was those moments where you think you never know what could have happened, right? It could have been different. I use that to motivate me to write my books. But what kept you going? Because you had the first chapter, but then, that journey was going to be 6 months later. You have a lot of that self-talk. What did you continue to tap into to keep taking that pen to paper, or, well, metaphorically, because you probably did it on a computer, but how did you keep going for 6 months to see this through to the end? What did you think about?
I think part of it was putting it out there. So I not only did I say I was going to do this, I put it out on Facebook, and said, hey, I'm writing this book. I'm going to have, it'll be launching in, this year or at this time. And just because I committed to myself, and then I put it out there, and then continued to kind of talk about it, people would bring up to me like, oh, how's it going? And it kind of kept the message out in front of other people that were like kind of cheering me on along the way.
That's right.
And I committed to saying, all right, I'm going to spend at least, 3 to 4 hours a week, writing, and I have to hit that minimum, and whether it's in one chunk or in a couple days. But that, I think, was probably the biggest thing, was people were just cheering me on and asking me how it was going. And it was like, all right, now I've got a team to help me get this done.
You put your own feet to the fire by announcing it.
Right.
And what I talk about in every single one of my books, I intertwine goals, because leaders have goals, salespeople have goals. When you do strategic planning, there's goals, blah, blah, blah. I even wrote a weight loss book, and it has goals. I mean, everything revolves around goals. And here's what I found out. What you said reminds me of when I was in boot camp. I know you're wondering, like, where is he going with this? Boot camp was chaotic. It was just, it was off the charts. And they told us our date. They said, if you make it out of my boot camp, if you pass every test, you'll graduate on November 13th, 1987. And I remember taking that date and writing letters home saying, I'm going to, not I might, but I'm going to graduate on this date. And I mailed them. And I remember the feeling, maybe you did it when you posted it on social too. I remember the feeling when I closed the mailbox lid saying, uh-oh, I just committed to graduating on November 13th. And I love this part about goal setting, people started writing back saying, we're going to be there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I really got to do it now.
Pressure's on.
Yeah. Like, oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't have said anything, but I'm saying maybe we should say it more. Like, if you have a goal, announce the goal and the timeline. I think those two components are absolutely huge.
Definitely. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, the right people will kind of show up to help cheer you along too. And I think
isn't that the truth?
If nothing else, you don't want to let anybody down. And not that anyone would have gone and said, "Oh my gosh, Kari, you said you were going to get this book done on this date, and you haven't gotten it done." But just knowing that I had committed to that, and that I do care what people think about, me from that perspective, right?
Yeah.
And if I want to be a leader and set these goals for my team and for other people, I need to be held accountable for it too.
That's correct. I think that is such a powerful word, accountability, especially that personal accountability. I feel the same way you do. If I announce it, I feel obligated to achieve it.
Right.
And that was how I was with my book, The Communication Movement. I put it out there. I remember Gina saying, "Oh, you just put it out there. You got to get it done."
Yep.
But it allows you to attract people that sometimes come out of the woodwork to say, "How's it coming?"
Right.
Some people might even say, "What do you need?" Or that one motivation saying, "I can't wait to read that."
Exactly.
And then I started thinking, well, I can't wait to read it either. I'm excited. I'm excited. Let me ask you this: accomplishing a goal like that,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much personal input. There's so much of your own emotions going into a book like that. What did it feel like when you accomplished it? When it was finished, how did that feel?
Oh, so going through once you write it is step one. Then
That's
you
right.
have the editing process, and then
That's
the other
correct.
editing process, and all the rest of it. But I'll never forget, I don't remember the exact date, but it was in November, and I had just finished up like the last chapter, and
Yeah.
like hitting that send button and sending it off to my editor. I was like, I can't believe it. Like
Very surreal.
yeah, so surreal. And like I rode that high for weeks on end. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so cool. And like, if nothing else comes of this, if I don't sell one book, I don't even care, because I had a goal, I had a mission, and I accomplished it. Like that was it for me. So
Yeah.
granted, I did want to sell a few books as well, but
I'm with you on that. I get it. I mean, for me, selling the books is one thing. It's when you get some feedback about it. And
sure.
and since with these book distribution channels that are out there, anybody can order it anywhere in the world. It's interesting when you start getting feedback that people will say, "I needed this right now," or "This
Yeah.
helped me out." How did the feedback help motivate you? You got some feedback on your book, because I know you did.
Yeah.
Does that motivate you to go, I'm ready to write that second one now?
Definitely. It actually motivated me faster than I thought it was going to be, because I kept saying, like, I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was fun. But I think also, having gone through that experience once, like, you have a better sense of like what's coming, and
Yeah.
like how that
Oh, yeah.
process works. So it's like, I've done this before. Like, it's not as, it's a big deal, but it's not as big of a deal as it was the first time. So the feedback though, for me, is like, and how, people applied it. I still remember one of our neighbors up the lake. She's a good friend of ours. And she read it, and she said, it's interesting. I never thought about how much her role had changed at her company. And she was now just kind of more like an internal rep, versus like she used to deal with the customers.
Sure.
And now she's kind of more of an order taker,
Yeah.
versus like helping them figure out what they needed. And she said, I brought this book into my boss and said, "Hey, I need to have that connection with the customer. I want to be able
Wow.
to have that conversation with them, because I think that that's going to help our relationship. And I'm missing that." And it was like, just something that, I don't know, feedback like that just definitely helps motivate you. Like, hey, I'm on the right path, and I made
Yeah.
it on that one person. And even if it's only one person, that's enough. So,
I mean, exactly. I think that, you're an impact player too. I know for you, your goals involve impacting others. I mean, your goals even impact animals. Is that correct?
yes.
So you're not just, I've got to take my game up a notch, because my goals have pretty much involved people, but yours are people and animals. Can you just tell us a little bit about that focus you have for our furry friends?
Yes.
Or maybe some that don't have fur, but I'm
Yeah.
just summing it up. But you have a passion for helping. You have a passion for animals.
I do. Yeah, it's, I've always been, a huge animal lover. My dad was the same way. Like, I joke that he could like talk to animals, because he would, he kind of had that Dr. Dolittle type feel.
Sure.
Like any dog or animal that was around him was just, kind of kindred spirit with him. But
Yeah.
I I'm a big believer in helping with the rescues and the organizations out there. So, and fortunately, our team is as well. So it's been kind of fun. We do typically have like one or two nonprofits that we sponsor every year, and we get involved and find out what we can do to help them from a marketing standpoint, but also driving, revenue
Sure.
fundraising for them. So our most recent one is such a cool thing. It's called the Top Dog Foundation, and they actually help pair elderly dogs that need to be rehomed, that have been given up for whatever reason, with elderly people. And just the coolest like combination. So
I mean, you're actually helping animals and people at the same time. I mean, you did
yeah,
the combo goal.
exactly. So anytime we can get involved with organizations like that are going to make an impact, that's right up my alley.
Let me ask you this. You touched down on something everywhere I've ever worked, whether I was running the company, a member of the company, have my own company, having these shared goals as a team, right? Outside of the business. So, helping animals, it's much bigger than Wild Fig. Am I
Right,
correct?
right.
And like for us, we have our own foundation. We award scholarships to military spouses. It's much bigger than Think Great. But it unifies us to work on some things together outside of the business world. How important is it for somebody listening right now that has a business, maybe they're a leader in that business, to unify their teams through outreach programs? Is that critical right now, especially?
Definitely. And I think it's so this time we did something a little bit different. We had each member of the team actually submit, a couple different organizations that really meant a lot to them. And then we also reached out to our client base and to our connections and asked them for, feedback on organizations that they could really use some help, and engage them in that process. And then our team got to pick, we brought them all in together. Our team got to pick like who they wanted to donate to and what that looked like. And it was fun to see like all of the creative ideas that they came up with, and how excited we were with like every donation that came in. We were like, yes, we're making an
That's right.
impact. I think being able to do it as a team from start to finish was a cool process.
I think right now, I think there's probably a lot of people listening saying, I need to have some sort of outreach goal with our team.
Right.
We did a lot with the world of cancer, fighting cancer. We did the Relay for Life. And even at the media company in California, we created our own team, and some of our team members came out and walked the track all night. There's something about doing some things outside of the business that unify you in the business. Would that be accurate to say that your team is more unified by doing other things rather than just digital marketing, right?
Oh, for sure. I think, and just that common, like you said, I mean, doing something together. And it's interesting that you say the Relay for Life, because that was my career path in a former life. So I have a lot of passion, for that as well. But yeah, I think just bringing people together for, the greater good, and having that experience together, and those feelings that they go through during that experience, I think is something that, in terms of building relationships, it's so key. And just to really kind of connect the team as well.
And I know for you right now, guiding your team through this, we're all going to come out better on the other side.
Right.
But as leaders in business, I think it's important that we have specific traits that we adhere to, maybe identify. And I know for you, a leadership trait that really stands out is humility. And how have you tapped into that during this time period? What has that meant to you during the pandemic and all the transitions that are happening and the chaos? Why is that so important for you to have that ability to be humble or have humility?
Yeah, I think partly because, we're all human, right? And people do business with people, not with companies. And I think just, being vulnerable, being able to kind of to have those frank conversations versus to be like, oh, everything's great. Well, it wasn't great for a while there. And
That's
I think being able to feel comfortable with sharing that, and like, hey, here's where we're at, here's where we're going to go. Or like, hey, something's got screwed up. I'm queen of being the first to admit, like, hey, that's on me. I should have clearly communicated that. And I think that the team, making them, being humble and showing that humility to them, and being able to like take, not the blame, but like accountability for my actions, also helps them to see like, hey, it's okay to fail. It's okay that, we tried this and it didn't work. that's all right. We learn something from it, and that's the most important piece of it. And so I think that human aspect, like we all need a little bit more human, put back
I
in.
agree. I completely agree. But I think like, what you're touching down on is so important because during this whole pandemic, the transition coming up, if you don't exhibit humility, it's going to be hard to say, I just don't know. I don't have the answer for that.
Right.
A year ago, we had all the answers. We knew what we were doing. It was business as usual. And now it's business as unusual. It's
Right.
like, you have to tell your teams, I don't know about this. I'm not sure. I mean, how many times have we waited to see what's the next executive order coming out in order to guide some things? So I think humility, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's so important that our teams know that we're still human beings. We don't
Right.
have all the answers.
No.
Well, let me ask you this. I know you're going to write a second book. I know goals are important to you. Is there anything that you can share with us about this second book? And you don't have to give away any secrets, titles. Maybe do you have a time frame when you're looking to have it written?
Yep, I put my 6-month goal back on, which is a little bit more challenging with this one because it's not similar. It's somewhat similar to my first book, but it's really on like I said, kind of putting the human back into business. So helping businesses figure out how to humanize their brand. So the importance of kind of pulling back the curtain and sharing and highlighting, your team members and the value that they bring, to your business. And so it's something I'm super passionate about. I've probably been mulling it over since I finished the last book, just trying to figure out how that all kind of ties back together. And it was really like that humanizing your brand. And I feel like now more than ever, like I mentioned,
I think that's needed.
It is.
I think it's needed.
It's how we're going to do business going forward, and having that human connection is so important. And so helping companies figure out how to establish that, what does that look like? And so it'll be more of a more focused kind of intensely on business. So marketing professionals, business owners, et cetera. And it'll have kind of more of the philosophy behind it, but also very, very tactical. Like, here's how you can do it, on social media. So
now, even though you don't have to share it, do you already have a title for this one?
No.
Okay, that's all right. I take a long time on the titles too. I think they're so critical.
Yeah, this one's got me. It's just been like circulating, and I think
that means the content of the book is powerful. Then when there's so much great content, you're like, all right, this could be, no, I can't. Okay, wait, maybe this one.
Yeah. And
here's what's funny. When I looked up your book, Living with the Lid Up, I'm like, that's an interesting title. Then I saw the cover with 2 teenage boys on there. I said, all right, I get what she's talking about. Yeah. I get it. Well, I'm sure that this book is going to be not only helpful for people, but extremely relevant as some of the distancing, the remote working is still going to be there. We need to humanize more. It's interesting. I work with a lot of HR people, and we tend to refer to them as HR, and we don't even really go back to say this is human resources.
Right.
We've almost removed people from the scenario, and the digital presence, from a Zoom or GoToWebinar. We need to have that people side put back in. So I'm excited. Count me in for a copy of your book. I'll read that. I would love to read that. And are you saying it's 6 months from when?
Oh, so 6 months from February 1st.
So August. Your book will be out in August?
It'll be done. It'll be done-ish.
I understand.
And headed to the editing process. So I committed to getting it written and then to my editor by then. So
let me say this. I know that part of your philosophy at Wild Fig Marketing is that every company has a story that needs to be told.
Right.
And so can you just explain why you chose that as a motto for how you do business? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think kind of like going back to the whole like own your magic, walk in your purpose. I think that every company has something that is, a unique trait or personality or deliverable that they bring into the marketplace, and making sure that they understand what that is. So like, why do customers choose to work with you? And have you asked them that question? Yeah. And then making sure that once you understand that's the information that you're putting front and center, on your online messages, on website, et cetera. So I think, and I also love knowing the story behind a company, whether it's, hey, I grew up in this field, or I wanted to challenge myself and learn a new skill, or whatever it might be. I love knowing like what their story is. And I think that if you're, it's important for your customers and your prospects to know your story, but it's even more important for your employees to know your story.
That's
like,
exactly right.
Like how you came to be. And I think that that is probably one of the most powerful things that a company can do, is to make sure that they share, especially if they've been in business a long time, like to go back, like, did you know this is,
It's their heritage.
Yeah. And
it's heritage.
It helps create, better buy-in.
Yeah.
Perspective too, like, wow, I didn't know that, or like, here's kind of philosophy behind starting the business.
I have this idea that when I work with businesses, that they need to look at their identity. So that part of that is their story, their history, their heritage. I've often told them and encouraged them, it's not what you do that's as important as who you are.
Right.
Because chances are your clients have competitors out there that do the same things that they do. So you actually help find the essence of who they are.
Exactly.
So Kari, I know that there's people listening right now that are probably like, not only do I need to order your book, I need to get on a waiting list for the next book, but I need to talk to you about our story. How do people get a hold of you? How can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm going to our website, wildfigmarketing.com, or on Facebook and LinkedIn. We're very active there as well. So reaching out to us, we do lots of different free evaluations to help with companies that are just trying to figure out kind of what they should do, or what's that next step to help them.
That's awesome.
Reach their goals. And I think with COVID, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of shows, trade shows, events, as you well know, that are canceled. And so a lot of businesses have been reaching out to us lately because they're struggling, like, hey, we've always done like this home show, or we've always had this event. Now what? And so helping them kind of figure out what that new strategy looks like. And also to your point, kind of calming them, like, hey, we can figure this out. There's other ways to make it happen.
That's right.
That's been a big thing, a big theme that we've heard recently from a lot of people reaching out to us.
I mean, I think one thing I've gotten out of this discussion here is just how connected you are with who your client is, and people looking for a digital marketing extension of their team. They really need that. I think now more than ever, especially with your focus on, identifying their story, getting their story out there, bringing the human side back into their brand. If you have somebody listening right now that's just saying, I want to achieve some greatness in my life, do you have any final thoughts on, mindset, or ways that they should be thinking, or just some tips for people that are looking to achieve greatness in their life, just like you have?
Yeah, I think kind of a routine. So I'm, like I said before, a big reader. So the Miracle Morning Routine was a very interesting book for me, just having that, like making sure that you're taking care of yourself. Like they say, putting on the oxygen mask on you before, when you're on the flight. I think that self-care and taking that time and not feeling guilty about taking that time is really, truly important for your personal and professional well-being.
That's
and so
right.
I think that for me, like getting that routine going. So I exercise, I meditate, I do visualization every morning. And it's so fun to see then, like at the end of the year, like as I'm able to take things off, my board that happened, like, or to look back and go, oh my gosh, this is all that was accomplished. I think just that constant focus on like what those goals are, what you're going to do to reach them, and then just kind of that mindset.
I don't think right now, with the pandemic going on, the transitions, all the uncertainty, I don't think enough business leaders are thinking about themselves. I think that, I love your analogy, the oxygen mask dropping down. I think as a leader, we tend to go, I got to get my team set up with this, but there's so much power in just taking a little bit of time for yourself.
Right.
And how can you take care of other people if you're in bad shape? Right.
And I think also too, they, modeling the behavior that you want, from your team as well.
That's right.
And I'm sometimes not the best at it, because it's like the to-do list is always, long, and it seems like it gets longer and longer every day. But I've really had to be conscious about like when I, email the team, and if I'm sending stuff out, at 6, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, what message am I sending to them? And so kind of looking at trying to be cognizant of that all
Yeah.
the time is so important. And I think that also comes with your health too. So I
Yeah.
tell them about, here's what I do every morning, share with them like the power of that, so that they start to see like, hey, it's okay for me to take that time or to go, walk the dog in the middle
Sure.
of the day, because I know when I come back, I'm going to have more energy and I'm going to feel better. And that's what we care about. So,
Well, you gotta look out for the welfare of your people.
right,
And you're one of those people. You know what I
right.
mean? You know, I think, that reminds me of just anytime I've been in that caregiver role.
Hmm.
And you've probably experienced this even, with your son with the accident that happened. When you move into a caregiver role, one of the unique phenomenons is you stop taking care of yourself.
Right.
But if you really care about that person, you have to be in peak shape and peak mental state and in order to really take care of them. So, but
Yep.
I was guilty as charged. I did a couple years where I didn't focus on me at all, paid the price on it,
Hmm.
but I had to regroup and go, wait a minute, I got to put my own oxygen mask on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like I went through that as well. Like I had injured myself and then decided to kind of had to stop exercising for a little while.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it until like, maybe 6 months down the road, like the impact it was having, and having to make that switch. Like I normally am very, very, motivated in the morning, and I'm really good. Like between 5 and 7 a.m., I can get a ton done. And I had to say, I'm going to hold on that. I'm going to work out first, because I
yeah,
know that I'll have more energy throughout the course
that's
of the
right.
day. And that commitment to that was a big, was a game changer. So
Yeah. Well, and especially right now, I think that, the stay-at-home orders, the social distancing, just curbside pickup. I mean, everybody's encouraged us to sit on the couch right now. Not that they're coming out and saying that, but
right.
um, this is I think we are in a different world right now than we've ever been in. And
Mhm.
it's going to take a different way of thinking to get us through there. I love the idea of putting yourself first so that you can take better care of your people.
Right.
And I love the fact that you come across so genuine and so sincere about helping your clients out. I think that that's one thing everybody's going to get out of this today. And I'm excited about your next book. I'm excited about
Yeah.
the cover of your first book is
Yeah.
brilliant. Just genius. Sometimes you see other artists work, other authors work, and you're
Yep.
like, dang, that's a good one. Yeah, she got me on that one. But I understand where you're going with that. I think that you have a true passion for people and animals, as we now know. And I'm excited about seeing what the future holds for Wild Fig. I know you guys are going to do some amazing things, and I'm just so grateful that you took some time to be with us today.
It was an absolute pleasure, and especially being able to spend time with like-minded individuals that are just as passionate about making a difference. So thank you.
I think we need to do that more often, right? We
Yes,
need
we
to,
do.
to share ideas because, I come out of this. One of the great things about having guests like you is I come out of this going, I got some stuff to work on.
Yeah.
I can be better. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. And same here. So
Well, Kari, when your book is finished and ready to be purchased, I want to be one of the first to buy it. But also send us a link so we can keep everybody posted who heard this session so they can order it too.
awesome. I will be happy to do that.
Thanks again, Kari. It was great talking to you. Great to see you. And I wish you the best of luck in this transition phase, but keep me posted on everything.
I definitely will. Thanks, Eric.
Have a good day.
You too.